Every detail presented to us give us hints, foreshadowing what might soon be relevant to the story, characters that are in some ways connected to one another, and just the lore and culture that inhabits Mushoku Tensei's world is just outstanding in such detail that is unseen before in the genre, where everything has a purpose and relevance to the overarching story. And the added detail of presenting to us a visually stunning fantasy world, which shows how an amazing work of art Mushoku Tensei is, resulting in a believable and immersive world that is intriguing and serve as the stage for where the characters perform and where the story shall unfold, which lead me to state one of the strengths of Mushoku Tensei, which is its story. Mushoku Tensei pretty much runs through every isekai tropes that we already know of, but what it differs that it's more polished and structured in a way that is more grounded than with the other isekais before it. The story didn't start off with a clear goal and just set off on a grand adventure. As a matter of fact, Mushoku Tensei started off with the general feeling of a slice of life anime, depicting one of the most mundane things to do in this fantasy world, relatable conflicts and just outright comedic banters with the characters throughout the first few episodes, which made our first few impressions of Mushoku Tensei such a cozy anime to watch, which only shows the duality of the series, as this became prominent in the later volumes of the light novels as well, where we are just presented with the daily life of our characters and how each one of them intertwined with one another. It's refreshing in a genre that is filled with just power fantasy action and bland filler episodes that would only give way for occasional fan service and separating itself from the main story. Not that Mushoku Tensei lacks in the fan service and power fantasy department. As a matter of fact, it utilizes these tropes with a certain purpose, and we understand that because the show itself is well aware of what's its premise and who are its characters. While in the action side of things, it's one of the best shows to be immersed with just pure high fantasy action. But Mushoku Tensei integrated these casual slice of life scenes in the story as entertaining as its action side of things, and purposely made it to be part of the whole premise that Mushoku Tensei is aiming for, which is following the eventful life and adventures of its characters. For once, we actually have an isekai putting the age progression somewhat naturally than with the other isekai shows sporting the same premise. It literally feels like as if we're tagging along on this grand adventure. And where Mushoku Tensei shines with its story the most is when it becomes serious. It lets us feel as if everything is at stake. It doesn't shy away from showing us the drama and the darker side of this fantasy world that our characters inhabit, where it isn't all fun and games and there are no second chances. It doesn't go as far as being just a goofy isekai anime where we have an OP protagonist that would one-shot every enemy he encounters. Our protagonist is surely strong for this world and his age, but it doesn't give him the upper hand to someone who has more experience than with the power he has. Sure, he becomes victorious at some of these fights, but either with the help of another character. And some of these later fights even show how powerless he is regardless of the advantages he has. Despite being comedic in theme and execution, the show is well aware of its trope as it should be, and it takes its story seriously when it wants to take it seriously, which I admire so much as to how flexible the show is from a storytelling perspective. Key events just seemingly happen with the clear intent of story progression, it not just outright forced conflicts just to drive the show's excitement, which made Mushoku Tensei shine from the pool of isekai shows before it, where there is always that heavy anticipation of what might soon come up with the story next, because Mushoku Tensei built its story on how and where our characters progresses. It's dynamic and makes us feel that we are experiencing the adventure, the drama, and how it let us be immersed with the characters and story as much as the world itself. But looking deeply enough to understand Mushoku Tensei's underlying story, we have to understand the inclusion of the main character himself and how the story revolves around this one character.